At once the pre-storm light began to fade in the master's eyes, his breath failed him, and he felt the end coming. He could still see the deathly pale Margarita, helplessly reaching her arms out to him, drop her head to the table and then slide down on the floor. Poisoner, the master managed to cry out. He wanted to snatch the knife from the table and strike Azazello with it, but his hand slid strengthlessly from the tablecloth. Everything around the master in the basement took on a black color and then vanished altogether. He fell backwards and in falling cut the skin of his temple on the corner of his desk. When the poisoned ones lay still, Azazello began to act. First of all, he rushed out of the window and a few instants later was in the house where Margarita Nikolaevna lived. The ever-precise and accurate Azazello wanted to make sure that everything was carried out properly. And everything turned out to be in perfect order. Azazello saw a gloomy woman, who was waiting for her husband's return, come out of her bedroom, suddenly turn pale, clutch her heart, and cry helplessly. Natasha, somebody come and fall to the floor in the living room before reaching the study. Everything's in order, said Azazello. A moment later he was beside the fallen lovers. Margarita lay with her face against the little rug. With his iron hands, Azazello turned her over like a doll, face to him, and peered at her. The face of the poisoned woman was changing before his eyes. Even in the gathering dusk of the storm, one could see the temporary witches cast in her eyes and the cruelty and violence of her features disappear. The face of the dead woman brightened and finally softened, and the look of her bared teeth was no longer predatory but simply that of a suffering woman. Then Azazello unclenched her white teeth and poured into her mouth several drops of the same wine with which he had poisoned her. Margarita sighed, began to rise without Azazello's help, sat up and asked weakly. Why, Azazello, why? What have you done to me? She saw the outstretched master, shuddered, and whispered. I didn't expect this, murderer. Oh, no, no, answered Azazello, he'll rise presently. Ah, why are you so nervous? Margarita believed him at once, so convincing was the red-headed demon's voice. She jumped up, strong and alive, and helped to give the outstretched man a drink of wine. Opening his eyes, he gave a dark look and with hatred repeated his last word. Poisoner. Ah, Insults are the usual reward for a good job. Replied Azazello. Are you blind? Well, quickly recover your sight. Here the master rose, looked around with alive and bright eyes, and asked, "What does this new thing mean?" "It means," replied Azazello, "that it's time for us to go. The storm is already thundering, do you hear? It's getting dark. The steeds are pawing the ground, your little garden is shuddering. Say farewell, quickly say farewell to your little basement." "Ah, I understand," the master said, glancing around, "you've killed us, we're dead." "Oh, how intelligent that is. And how timely. Now I understand everything." "Oh, for pity's sake," replied Azazello, "is it you I hear talking?" "Your friend calls you a master, you can think, so how can you be dead?" "Is it necessary, in order to consider yourself alive, to sit in a basement and dress yourself in a shirt and hospital drawers?" "It's ridiculous." "I understand everything you're saying," the master cried out, "don't go on. You're 1,000 times right." "Great Woland." Margarita began to echo him. "Great Woland." "He thought it out much better than I did." "But the novel, she shouted to the master, "take the novel with you wherever you fly." "No need," replied the master, "I remember it by heart." "But you won't forget a single word of it?" Margarita asked, pressing herself to her lover and wiping the blood from his cut temple. "Don't worry. I'll never forget anything now," he replied. "Fire, then!" cried Azazello. "Fire, with which all began and with which we end it all." "Fire!" Margarita cried terribly. The little basement window banged, the curtain was beaten aside by the wind. The sky thundered merrily and briefly,